case you all didn't know that. One more. So I am going to, why did that turn off? Is it back on? Yep. Okay. I'm going to attempt to go through 2 chapters tonight and then 2 chapters again next week. Did anybody read ahead, or did you guys just do this chapter?
I was going to read, but it got busy.
Okay. All right. That's okay. We'll cover it. We're just going to boot, scoot, and boogie. So this one is boundaries and yourself. So as you guys know, that up until this point, we have been talking about setting boundaries, external boundaries. Sorry, that's why this isn't working. It's because it's not on my head. Sorry, Reed. He's probably like, you dingbat. There we go. Sound better? Yeah. Okay, so instead of looking at the control and the manipulations of others, which requires outer boundary conflicts, tonight we are going to look at inner boundaries. And these inner boundaries are obviously conflicts with ourself. So he starts off by telling the story of this woman that comes in, and she said, I haven't told you yet about this relationship. And this certain relationship, it's with this woman, and this woman eats too much, and this woman has an attacking tongue, and this woman is undependable. She lets me down all the time. She's borrowed money from me and never paid me back. And then she said this statement, and this woman is me. Yep, absolutely. So her name was Sarah, and she was acknowledging a conflict that most of us have, and that is setting limits on ourselves. So how many of you feel like you have been developing, which obviously we're going to continue developing, but how many of you feel like you've been developing these outer limits, these outer boundaries so far as we've gone through this class? Yeah? Okay, good. Is everybody practicing? That's good. Practice is good, right? Because practice makes perfect. All right, so now we're going to get into the business of ourselves. So we're going to look at our responsibility to control our own bodies. And you guys, don't let yourself get into a defensive posture as we go through this, because we're going to talk about some stuff that you probably deal with on a regular basis. And just remember, in Christ, there is no condemnation. So you don't have to look at yourself and say, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. You need to look at yourself and say, I'm loved. And because I'm loved, I can look at myself. I can look at these areas of weakness in myself, and God will give me the strength to overcome them. All right? So let's look at some troubles that we have with self-control. The good thing about self-control is it can be built, right? We can develop it, and of course, that's God's will. So a first area that some of us struggle with is food. Teresa, she came in and she worked for an attorney, and she would work for 12 long hours at a time, and they were grueling hours. And 12 hours in isolation. I don't know if any of you in here work that long by yourself, but that's pretty brutal, isn't it? 12 hours in isolation, and in order to soothe herself or for herself to cope, she began to eat. Now, this food happens to be a really bad one, because everybody can see it on the outside of you. Everybody can look at you and tell whether you have a problem with food or not. So it brings a whole lot of shame. So she had gained 30 pounds in 1 year, and of course she felt completely out of control. I don't know if you guys have ever felt this before or not, but times in your life when you're like, why can't I stop eating? I know I'm full. Why do I just keep shoving it in? Getting the munchies, absolutely. So some who are overweight feel enormous self-hate and shame about their condition and behavior, which can drive them deeper to food. And I want you to hear this, deeper into food and deeper away from relationship. Everybody get that? Okay, keep that in your mind as we're going through these things. So for her, food was serving as a false boundary. And this is an internal boundary problem. Some people may use food to avoid intimacy. They know that if they gain weight, that they become less attractive, and so they use it for that. Some use the comfort from food because it is less scary than the process of a real relationship. How many of you know that relationships are hard? Relationships we have to work at, right? And sometimes we just use food in order to cope and think, oh, I'm not going to go to that level of hard. I'll go to this level of hard because at least it brings me a little bit of satisfaction for a minute until it starts showing on the outside. Okay, the next thing is money. People have problems with many different areas dealing with money. Let's talk about a few areas. Impulse spending. How many of you, when you get triggered, the first thing that you go do is blow your entire paycheck? I'll tell you, this is one that I have done many times. Careless budgeting. Living beyond one's means. This is what they call high living. Credit problems. Anybody have credit problems? Chronically borrowing from friends over and over and over, continuing to borrow because you don't have that internal structure that tells you to stop spending. And so you have to continually borrow. Ineffectual or non-existent savings plan. Working overtime or multiple jobs to pay the bills. Here, this goes back to the cost of high living, because if you get a brand spanking new car nowadays, they're like $80,000, $90,000, which back when Jason and I got married, you could get a house for that. I think we bought our first house for that, in fact, but now that's a vehicle. And so in order to have this high living, keep up with the Joneses, well, I'll just work 2 jobs. I'll work 3 jobs. I'll work 4. Where does relationship fit into that? Into somebody who works that much? There's no relationships. Repeatedly bailing out others who make irresponsible financial choices. God has intended for money to be a blessing to us and to others. So listen, the problem is not money. The problem is the love of money. So our goals should be saving money, number 1, keeping our costs down, shopping for discounts. How many of you guys shop for discounts? They're actually really fun to shop for discounts. It really is fun. And the problem is often the cost, again, of high living. If the outgo exceeds your input, you have a self-boundary issue. When we have difficulty saying no to spending money, to spending more than we should, we run the risk of becoming someone else's servant. And how many of you know that the Lord's desire for our lives is not to be anyone's servant, just His? Him and Him alone. He wants to be the only God of our lives. Okay, next one, time. How many of you are terrible with time? How many of you show up places late? This is an internal boundary issue. So days and times get away, not enough hours to accomplish the task that you have in front of you. Let's talk about some of the struggles. Here we go. Showing up prepared for business meetings, being on time for appointments, meeting project deadlines, consistently attending church and school activities, paying bills on time. People whose time is out of control inconvenience others whether they mean to or not. The problem often stems from one or more of the following causes. Let me tell you guys, when you guys say that like it's me, I love that people are owning that shows growth right there, that you're owning your stuff. All right, so let's talk about let's talk about a couple causes. Yeah, I know that none of us would ever say, well, I feel like I'm omnipotent. That's Jesus. But that's what this shows, omnipotence. So it's unrealistic, grandiose expectations of what they can accomplish in any given amount of time. These people are no problem. I'll get it done. I'll do it. How many of you know that if you want to get something done, just give it to a busy person? Because they do not have the internal structure of saying no. At what cost will they go? At all costs. At cost of every relationship in their life, at cost of being a spouse, at cost of being a parent. It's a high cost to pay. The second one is over-responsibility for the feelings of others. So in other words, they think that leaving the party early will insult the host. I couldn't possibly leave early. I had to stay until the last person was there because somebody might have gotten their feelings hurt. The next one is lack of realistic anxiety. So they live so much in the present that they neglect to plan ahead. How many of you know that if you plan on being somewhere, you need to leave out of your house 10 to 15 minutes before you need to get there? Not right at the time that we're supposed to get there, but that's a good anxiety. That's an anxiety that says, I need to be out the door right now and nothing holds you back. You get to the car. And then it teaches you to plan to get stuff that you needed in order to get there. So the next one is rationalization. They minimize the distress and the inconvenience that others must put up with because of their lateness. They think, well, what's the big deal? I'm late. Who cares? You know, it doesn't matter that it inconveniences other people. So people with underdeveloped time self-boundaries end up frustrating not only themselves, but they also frustrate everybody else. Next one, task completion. We all have goals in life, and we would like our task, whether big or small, to be able to say, I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Therefore, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. But some people who are really good starters, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is me all over again. I'm straight out the gate, man. Come on, baby, I'll get you out the gate. But the long run, that's a little different, something that I never developed. So let's talk about why. Why are people poor finishers? Number one, they're resistant to structure. Anybody hate structure except for me? Okay, there's a couple of you, good. So poor finishers feel that submitting to the discipline of a plan is a put down or cramps their style. You guys, that just defines me completely and totally. I don't like a plan. I will give you a secret, and you can ask Jason if you don't believe me. You could tell me tonight, one of you could come to me and say, hey, we're going to Hawaii tomorrow, and we're leaving at 5 a.m., and I would be the happiest girl in the entire universe. Doesn't matter what I have planned tomorrow. I'll clear it. Let's just go, because plans are made to be changed. But that's an internal boundary issue problem on my part. Okay, the next one. How about this one? Fear of success. Over concern that success will cause others to envy or criticize them. Did you know some people don't want to go there? They're like, I don't want to look successful because I know the price that successful people pay. They get criticized, people talking all kinds of hate on them. I ain't going there. The next one is a lack of follow-through. So an aversion, this one cracks me up because it's so me. Aversion to the boring nuts and bolts of turning the crank on a project. Birthing is exciting, and then they want to turn it over to somebody else. The next one is distractibility. This one they call modern ADHD. How many of you know that a lot of people think that they have ADHD, but it's really an underdeveloped inner boundary issue? So they're unable to focus on a project until it's done. How many in here feel like they can focus on something for a long period of time? Well, that's good. That's awesome. I cannot. Like I told you guys, this one is totally me. Number 5, inability to delay gratification. So they're unable to work through the pain of a project to experience the satisfaction of a job well done. Take me directly to the pleasure and take me there right now. The next one is inability to say